The Chicago Bears have a new head coach, and he's going to be bringing his exciting offense over from Detroit to Chicago. This is going to be his first offseason to try and add the weapons that he wants. My name's Tyler, here with my brother Ryan, and we're going to be doing our first ever mock free agency for the Chicago Bears here in a second. But before we do that, if you like the content that we put out and you want to help the channel grow, easiest way is hitting that subscribe button, tackling that bell, and leave a like and a comment while you're at it. Let us know what you want to see the Bears do this offseason. And Ryan, with that being said, let's pull up the Bears free agency list so far. They've
Oh,
already made a couple of moves. Oh, this is just the top free agents as of right here, but going to
there it is.
Chicago, there you go. So yeah, they've already made a couple moves. Already cut Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford's been dead for some time now. Gerald Everett
Yeah.
and Demarcus Walker as well. Both of those guys are still healthy and alive. They are just unemployed currently at the moment. But there's a lot of other big names here as well that are hitting free agency. A lot of offensive linemen, Keenan Allen, several defensive players also. Ryan, what are some of the big names you think the Bears are going to have a lot of conversations around when it comes who to keep and who not to keep when it
Yeah.
comes to free agency?
A lot of the big ones are on that offensive line there. You mentioned Coleman Shelton, Matt Pryor. Tevin Jenkins was one that we debated heavily before this video, kind of going through this exercise of like, do we want to keep him? Do we not want to? So that's going to be another one. Another one that I was reading about that I guess Bears fans are excited to bring back is Amin Ogbongbemiga. He was apparently a good rotational linebacker and a very important special teams player for them. So that's going to be another cheap one that they can re-sign. We don't do that in this video just because those bottom of the roster guys we don't really kind of dive into because a lot of times the contracts that they get are the same as the guys that are going to replace them. So it's just not. It wasn't worth the time in this video to go through, but there are a few guys I think internally that they're going to want to replace. So I mean, let's just kind of jump into it here and get started. So, the first thing that we usually do is we go and we try to clear up some cap space for these teams, make some cuts. The Bears kind of already did that for us in this one. We didn't end up making any other like
Yeah.
cap casualty cuts.
And the
Um,
Bears
th-
are already coming into with a pretty good cap space already, just shy of
yeah,
80 million
yeah.
coming in. And so,
Yeah, maybe we did talk about a couple, but we decided not to. Kevin Byard was one that they could save $7 million on there, and then like TJ Edwards, I could save 5.5. But I think with the being in an already pretty positive cap situation, I feel like cap casualties aren't something that they have to do. So if they just kind of wait and see how it plays out in camp, I think that's fine for this team in this situation. So all in all, let's just kind of jump right into internal free agency. And we only re-signed a couple guys, both on the offensive line. So we brought back Coleman Shelton for about $5 million just to kind of keep some of that continuity there. He was a good backup. He was thrust into a starter position when Ryan Bates went down with injury this past season. And so maybe he played a little bit more than Bears fans would like, but that veteran experience and him being a backup, I think is of value for this team. And then the other offensive lineman that we re-signed was Matt Pryor. Kind of the same thing. I do feel like he will be back. These are just two less expensive offensive linemen that we think that they could bring back and definitely not worry about drafting offensive linemen high. Not that if you brought back Tevin Jenkins, that would be an issue. But with that being said, you're gonna have to pay Tevin Jenkins 14, $15 million almost. And there's a chance he could come in and have just the same injury issues that he's had for a long time throughout his career. So we just went with the veteran route. They can potentially address like the high end of that in external free agents and then also in the draft.
yeah, and that's what the Bears are sitting in a very unique spot. This is a pretty solid interior offensive line class. There's a lot of tackles that were in college that'll probably kick in two guards here as well. One of
Mhm.
which might be the guy that they end up taking at 10. It's going to be Will Campbell. If he falls to them there, that would be extremely interesting overall. But uh, we had a big debate because it's kind of between Tevin Jenkins or maybe Kevin Zeitler, who they end up signing, who would follow Ben Johnson over from Detroit. But even now with Trey Smith being the franchise tagged by Kansas City, it's going to be interesting on how they handle Tevin Jenkins because I get being very cautious on wanting to pay Tevin Jenkins, and he's not worth the franchise tag money like how Trey Smith is to Kansas City. But at the same time, though, too, you don't want to pay him, get him locked in on a $15 million a year contract or however much he gets paid. And shoot, even 10 million is a lot for if he's going to be getting hurt and being inconsistent like that. And so he did. I will say, all things considered, he did play, I think, the most that he had throughout his career this season, through a vast majority of the games. But still, though, it was like it's still not good enough if you're going to be
Yeah.
paying him that kind of money. I think with Kevin Zietler, it gives the flexibility to one, you get him to come in, bring in those minutes, and not like you're paying Matt Pryor too much to be kind of a swing guard if you end up going with Will Campbell at the 10th overall pick is maybe a little hefty, but still to have that veteran experience and then having that consistency within the offensive line is pretty big. And so now you have a lot more options if you go this route when it comes to developing your interior of the offensive line. Because I Bears fans would love to hear from you, but I think you guys are set at tackle. I mean, maybe Braxton Jones could be a little bit improved, maybe, but I don't know where you're going to find it this year, or definitely I don't know
Yeah.
where you're going to find it in this draft. And so I
Mhm.
think with going this route here, you get the biggest bang for your buck. You also bring in a veteran who understands Ben Johnson's system and what he's going to be trying to accomplish, and can help relay some of that messages overall to the new offensive line core as well. And Tevin Jenkins is going to go get paid somewhere else. And so, but I can see it going both ways. And so, I think if it goes that route, and then even if they don't get Will Campbell, but they use one of their two second round picks on an offensive line, I still then you're getting good depth and can start building that core foundation of the offensive line for the future.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is too Kevin Zeitler's experience. Even if they do bring back Tevin Jenkins, I could see them going and signing a Kevin Zeitler just to bring that experience to the offensive line, the familiarity with Ben Johnson's system, as you mentioned. But I think this way they get three fairly solid interior offensive linemen. They can still go out. This is a really solid, I think, interior O line class. I think you look, Will Campbell is projected to kick inside. A lot of the guys, Armand Membu as well. Then you go look at like the true guards, like Tyler Booker, Donovan Jackson, those guys there. And I feel like the Bears at 10 could potentially land Will Campbell. At 39 or 41, they could potentially, or 38 and 42, whichever it is, they could potentially land a Tyler Booker or an interior offensive lineman there. So there's a lot of, I think, good options for them. But on the flip side of the ball, though, we have them making a little bit of a splash signing here. So they have Montez Sweat. So why not go out and get Josh Sweat? I just feel like for this defense, he makes a lot of sense. You're gonna have to sign him to a bigger deal, but I think if you give him 17 million a year, that's good value. You have a pretty good edge rushing duo there, and you can also write the contract with guarantees and things, so you're not necessarily on the hook for $51 million, but you can still go out and get or you're not on the hook for $51 million if it doesn't work out, but you can still go out and get the premier edge rusher in this class.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in the free agency class, I definitely think too
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
going to be a heavy attention to the defensive line as a whole in this draft class by the Bears as well, just to keep on improving, keep finding ways to be more dominant in the trenches because that's really this team's biggest issue. I kind of like the skill position players overall, and I think there maybe needs to be a little bit just more consistency in the trenches. I think they're doing that here so far, and so I think going back to the other side of the ball, speaking of skill position players, I think an area that really needs to be improved is going to be that running back room. And if you go look at what Ben Johnson really likes to have and what made that Detroit Lions offense super successful was they were able to run the ball extremely effectively with two separate backs. And I think that even though this is definitely a running back class that you're going to want to snag many of the potential running backs at any point in the round here. But I think if you go and get probably honestly maybe one of the top running backs in this free agency class, Pittsburgh's probably not going to re-sign Najee Harris, and I don't think he's going to be super expensive because he's not like a Saquon Barkley or like Derrick Henry, but he has been 1,000-yard rusher every single one of his years in the NFL. So I think you go and get him, and he reminds me of a David Montgomery style of play, and I think if you go and get someone similar to a Jameer Gibbs, and heck, maybe even two. Imagine if they got Ashton Genty with that 10th overall pick, and then you pair these two guys up together, and it's just a similar type setup as what they had in Detroit. Really making sure that both guys don't get too worn down, but still very heavy focus on running the ball, where both guys still get a lot of carries. So I kind of
Mhm.
like this route as well. Bears have the cap space for it. And once again, too, you can for running backs, then you can draw it up to where it's not a full guarantee, and you're going to have some outs over the next couple of years.
Yeah. Well, and also too, you made that comparison to David Montgomery. I feel like that's a good like thought into it if you're Ben Johnson. But then also too, when we made this, when we were talking about it before, I immediately went to all right. So then you can draft Travion Henderson at in the second or third
You can
round,
do that. Yep.
and it's like all right, well you have your third down back, you have your uh every other down back with Najee Harris, and it's just a really good enticing duo there. And so Najee Harris, I think, gives them a lot of flexibility, sets the floor for that running back room really high. And I feel like he could be a really good running back in a Ben Johnson system. So uh, sticking to the offensive side of the ball, let's address the receiver position. So we didn't re-sign Keenan Allen, but there's a guy that I felt was a good value. I think he can come in and provide a similar veteran experience as Keenan Allen, and then also to be much more affordable. And that's Tyler Boyd, the old Cincinnati wide receiver. You're going to get him on a really cheap deal. I believe we did 2 years, 4 million, so $2 million a year. But you just look at what he brings to the table, and he's kind of like a Keenan Allen light, where he was never as good as Keenan Allen, but he does a lot of the same things. But you're looking for your third or fourth wide receiver right now. You have DJ Moore. You drafted Remo Dunze in the top 10 last year. So I think Tyler Boyd can come in and be that third or fourth wide receiver. And then again, kind of like the running back position, you snag a guy in that second, third round area, or even day three of the draft, and I feel like that wide receiver room is in really good shape.
Exactly. Yeah, you're hoping that the entire rookie offensive skill position players that you have, Caleb Williams and Roma Dunes, they take a giant step forward as well. You're still going to have DJ Moore, and it was even kind of a down year for him, but also too Keenan Allen was taking some of those targets as well. And so I'm going to assume that Keenan Allen's targets and reps are going to be spread out more amongst DJ Moore and Roma Dunes. So to your point, you're just looking for another quality guy that can still be a good target for Caleb Williams to lean on, and that ones that defenses have to respect just enough while taking just enough attention off of for your skill position players or your star players to really shine. So
Mhm.
I like that pick. If you don't like that one, then you could go maybe Elijah Moore, maybe Rondell Moore as well, Robert Woods, and so there's so many different routes I think they can go for this price tag. And so Ryan, so with all these moves still, the Bears are sitting at about 35 million in cap. What are some
Yeah.
other moves you think the Bears could be making here to try and add on some good quality talent?
Yeah, so we could do Quandre Diggs, strong safety. I just feel like they have a good secondary, so you go and just add a guy here on another inexpensive contract just to kind of round out the skill sets in that room, and I feel like that is a really good fit there. And then the other one that we had laid out was addressing that defensive interior there with Levi Onwuzurike, another former Detroit guy. Not going to try to spell out that last name, but uh, a guy that can come in. You can sign him to a relatively inexpensive deal, but he's going to provide a lot of interior pressure, and I feel like that would be a good fit with the defensive coordinator there, whose name is escaping me at the moment. Um, and so,
They just hired a
it,
new one.
is it?
Is it Dennis
Uh,
Allen? I think it's Dennis Allen.
yeah, it is Dennis Allen.
Yeah.
Uh, but no, and so I feel like that's a good fit um in Dennis Allen's system. And so then you'd have Josh Sweat, Montez Sweat, and then Levi and Muzurike there in the middle. And that's to me, a pretty formidable uh, pressure inducing front that is on that defense.
Yeah, yeah, and so they're sitting now at $28 million, and we've addressed the offensive line in several different ways, defensive line in several different ways, and now several spots in secondary, several skill position players. And so this provides them a lot of flexibility, and they can maybe even make some bigger splashes. Shoot, even if they maybe want to resign Keenan Allen just to keep him there, they could afford him. He'd be looking for about 11 to $13 million probably. So if they'd want to keep him there, there's a lot of other different routes that they could go. And because that's the thing I think, just kind of finalizing my thoughts with this Bears rosters. I think I like this roster compared to some of these other teams, like for example, like Miami. I just don't like the Miami roster, but I like this roster and what they have set up. I think they can really get a good core foundational group of guys, and this could be a really big step for them, especially too with some of the other teams in the NFC North maybe regressing a little bit. But I, I I think from here it's a lot of different ways I think they can go on who they want to add. Maybe they want to save up for uh, uh, if they make some more trades for draft picks and they have more guys that they have to sign. So we'll have to kind of wait and
Yeah.
see. But here, there are already a lot of I think solid additions to maintain some of the good parts from last year's season, and then adding on to it to make it even better for 2025.
Yeah, and I think the Bears can definitely do that. Sometimes I think the train got off the tracks a little bit last year,
Yeah.
and then they just could never get it back on, and uh, they just lost it there. And we saw moments like where they kind of were shown that they had figured things out, but I don't think they had the coaching or the leadership late in the season to really kind of push through some of that adversity. So hopefully, coming back, this team has more experience. They can sign some good veteran pieces, and they can get back to hopefully winning ways. So let's go
Yep.
ahead. Let's wrap up this video here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That is the best way to help out the channel. While you're down there, leave a comment on what you thought about the Chicago Bears mock free agency. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you have done differently? And other than that, we'll see you guys next time.